And welcome back to the States. Next, longtime pollster Scott Rasmussen, now president of RMG Research, talks to our host Greg Bishop about what issues are expected to shape the outcomes of this election cycle and what he sees as a rise in Democratic Socialist candidates and the reason for that rise. Let's take a look.
In this election year, there's going to be a lot of issues that are going to be debated on stages and in the airwaves and in newspapers. But what do people really think about these issues, and are they actually educated on the issues? One group that looks closely at these issues and so much more is Rasmussen Reports, and joining us now, president of RMG Research, is Scott Rasmussen. Scott, thanks for taking time with the States today. A lot of things are going to be, unpacked in the months ahead as we get to the 2028 primary season. We still got to get through the 2026 election cycle. So what do you think are some of the major issues that you guys have been keeping a pulse on over there at Rasmussen?
Well, and I want to be really clear. Rasmussen Reports, my old company, I left there in 2013, RMG Research, where I do my work today. A lot of confusion around that, so anybody following it should be aware of that distinction. Look, issues. Number one issue always is the economy. That's what voters respond to more than anything else. And in this election cycle, the driving factor is the price of gas at the pump. Simply put, if the price of gas is lower in November than it is today, well, guess what? The Republicans will be in better shape. If it's higher than it is today, it'll be the opposite. Beyond that, there's a lot of issues that can move you off the baseline, some revolving around immigration and spending and lots of issues. And one that's in the news a lot right now, Democratic Socialism.
Yeah, and this obviously is making some headlines. There's candidates in various states where they are winning primary races, and even like in New York recently, a 5-term congressman, a Democrat, essentially being unseated by a Democratic Socialist of America party member. Scott, what is the DSA, and do Americans really understand their philosophy?
The simple answer is people do not understand the philosophy. The DSA is what people would think of as really a textbook definition of socialism, the kind of socialism that many people have fled around the world. But somehow somebody thinks they can do it a little bit better. When you talk about this, though, these DSA candidates, while they are truly socialist and they have a radical agenda that is at odds with America's founding ideals of freedom, equality, and self-governance, their winning does not reflect a large movement among the American people. We live in a 10-10-80 nation. 10% on the left are very active and at war with 10% on the right. The 10% on the left are fighting about whether they want to be more traditional Democrats or DSA Democrats. We are talking about very low turnout primaries. Now, recently we've seen some polling showing that, well, most Democrats say they kind of like socialism. Really important to distinguish between what most Democrats think of as socialism and what these candidates are doing. When you say, do they understand what this means? Well, I think that's asking it backwards. It's, do we understand what a voter says or what a voter thinks socialism means? Turns out that about 2/3 of voters who say they like socialism don't think it means more power and money going to the government. About 80% of them say they like free market economics. These are not people who have bought into the Kool-Aid of socialism. What's happened is the meaning of the word has changed.
Yeah, it seems that the principles of free market economics goes almost completely contrary to the ideals of socialism. But do you think some of these candidates are going to try to say, well, I'm not a socialist, I'm a democratic socialist?
Well, of course they were. And by the way, to your point, socialism's ideas totally contradict free market economics, totally contradict America's founding ideals. But most voters who say they like socialism don't think socialism is an economic system. They kind of think it's much more like making decisions closer to home, what we might call federalism. When you start talking about this, these candidates are very proud of their socialism. They think it is popular. They think they have some ideas that people really embrace. So I don't think they're going to run away from it. And bluntly, some of the places we see these candidates winning in the deep blue cities, it's not going to matter. There's no way a Republican is going to win this seat. It will pull the Democratic Party overall a little bit out of the mainstream. And that's going to be a net negative. The more these people come to represent the party, the worse it is for Democrats overall.
Now, of course, you'll see some of these other DSA members pop up in areas where they may not have the Democrat stronghold, like you mentioned, with some of these deep blue cities. But still, you're going to see some of these DSA members rise to the top and get into Congress. Scott, obviously, voters, when they see these things, how do you feel after all of the research that you guys have done and yourself over the years, the sentiments of voters, and even you touched on this, primaries are low voter turnout. Are the general public, those who don't vote in party primaries, who go to the general or midterm elections, are they going to be turned on or off by the DSA?
It depends on what they learn. If I was running against a DSA candidate, I would not scream this person's a socialist. I would not say, oh, they're really a communist. I would get away from labels because the labels don't mean anything and you have no credibility. I would tap into particular issues that they're advocating and show how out of touch they are. If I was running such a campaign last week when the Supreme Court issued their transgender ruling, I would point out that my opponent, whoever it might be in that particular race, really thinks boys should be allowed to play in girls' sports, but make it a very specific issue, make it a very credible, not something you're just making up. If you do that, voters are turned off. And we know this because we have a Senator McCormick from Pennsylvania who would not be in office today without issues like that.
On Fridays, the states, we featured moments from Governor Gavin Newsom's recent news conference in California, where he's considered, second or third when it comes to different polling of potential, Democratic presidential nominee. He was asked specifically about the Democratic Socialist candidates. Here's just some of what he had to say.
With the early versions of the DSA, I've seen this all my life. I think it's incredibly healthy. I don't understand this sort of notion it's zero sum. And it's always been present in our politics. I've been sort of mystified by the punditry. There's a lot of, I get for certain reasons, there's an over-indexing because they want to paint a picture of the party. The Green Party was in ascendancy during, the early, late part of 99, 2000, 2001, 2, 3. Progressives, in all stripes, the sort of early DSA. And what are they promoting? TK, you're right, for all. Free community college, low carbon green growth, cap and trade, equity, higher minimum wage, $25 for healthcare workers. In Ashley's point, $20 for fast food workers. I think $16.90. I haven't checked the latest indexing. I think it's going into effect shortly. On our main, those are what they're advocating for. We're advocating for all of that and balanced budgets, not to be profligate, to be progressive. So the alignment is more remarkably, the Venn diagram from my perspective is, sort of 80-20 as opposed to 20-80. And so I just don't see this in those old terms.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's the only answer Governor Newsom could give. He doesn't want to alienate the most energetic, active part of his party, because if he calls them stupid or wants to throw them out of the party, he has no chance of winning the nomination. He also doesn't want to embrace them because if he were to get the nomination, I'm kind of skeptical that he will, but if he were to get it, he doesn't want to be too closely tied to them because that would be a problem in a general election. So he's trying to just avoid the issue and be everything to everybody. Again, he's a politician. That's what you would expect.
And then we're heading to the 2026 midterm election. But after that's the presidential primary race is going to kick into full swing. How much do you think the political landscape and the issues are going to change here in the next few months?
Well, between now and November, I don't think it's going to change a lot. I think the dynamics on the economy are going to change. Now, obviously, if you had asked me this in mid-February, I wouldn't have expected we'd be in a war with Iran. Something really dramatic could change in the real world. But otherwise, I don't think anything is going to change the baseline beyond gas prices and the way people feel about their personal finances. When you get beyond this and you start looking at 2028, my first piece of guidance would be to say, don't even think about it until mid-2027 because it's way too early. But what happens this fall will have a huge impact. If the Democrats win the House, as they are favored to do, Donald Trump will be impeached again. I don't know if it'll be in the first month of the new Congress or the second month, but it's going to come very quickly. We're going to be stuck in a place where nothing is getting done because the Republicans still favor the whole Senate. So Republicans will approve a bunch of judicial nominees. We'll have arguments about inflation, and we will have a very wide open primary process in both parties.
It's going to be fascinating to watch, and I hope that we can connect with you all throughout it. Scott Rasmussen, president of RMG Research, greatly appreciate you being here with the States.